Alright, this is going to be spoiler talk for the first season of Krypton on Sci-Fi. I do have a review up that has very little spoilers on my blog, soundingbetterin my head.com. You can also go there, check out some other reviews I got, my comic strips and all that good stuff. But this is going to be a fully spoiler review, so be forewarned. I wasn't too particularly impressed with Krypton. First of all, the concept was garbage. When they announced Gotham a while back, and you're basically told that you're just going to see a young Jim Gordon trying to clean up the Gotham Police Department, it didn't do much for me. Then they added that, yes, you would see a young Bruce Wayne and origins of some classic Bat villains, and that kind of helped make the show sound a little bit better. Krypton was announced as basically being a story about Superman's grandfather 200 years ago on Krypton. Not very well sold from that premise. I mean, Kryptonians on Krypton have no powers. They're just people. There's aliens that look like humans. They added the twist that the show would deal with Superman's villains traveling back in time, and the timeline could potentially get screwed up and Superman could not exist. That made it a bit more interesting. I had to see how they pull it off and see how it went, and I'd say it didn't go that great, but it wasn't terrible. First of all, very strong production values on this show. Everything looked great, the sets looked cool, the special effects looked good, Brainiac's ship looked phenomenal. Brainiac looked fantastic in his first time you see him. His incarnation at the end wasn't the greatest, but it worked. But they've spent a lot of time on Kryptonian language and symbols, weapons, tech. They just put a lot of work into this show, but just the characters didn't really sell it. The star of the show is supposed to be Superman's grandfather, Seg-El, and he just was just there. I mean, he doesn't have any superpowers, obviously, like I said before, so he's got to have something that makes him interesting. I know he's a reluctant hero, but he should have something like, maybe he's a good fighter or a good pilot or some skill that makes him worth watching besides just him fulfilling his destiny to be Superman's grandfather. And he doesn't have too much of that. Yeah, he's a little bit clever in some of the earlier episodes, but it really doesn't pop up too much later on. I don't know. He never won me over. They introduced his sidekick, essentially, who looked like he was going to be the comic relief, the character of Kem, the bar owner. And he worked well in the beginning, and then he just kind of got away from the comic relief. I know he had some tragic stuff happen to him, but even that didn't seem to work that great. It didn't really feel that he was friends with this woman for so long, and so she was so important to him and her daughter that when this woman basically dies because of Brainiac, he's so wounded by it, he's got to raise the kid. As time goes on, when he's taking care of the kid, it sells a little better that he's got an emotional interest in what happens. But then you have the Vexes, which they just got the stereotypical scheming, manipulative politician thing going on, something like a watered down Game of Thrones thing. Even she was like a watered down Lannister, kind of character, and I don't know, she got a little bit more interesting, but they never even explained why they were doing what they were doing. They sort of got into why they thought Kansas City wasn't the greatest and they should be ruling it, but some of their maneuvering just didn't really ever get explained out. Like, why were they so hard up on getting Seg-El under their, on their side? And then probably the more important characters introduced were the Zods, and the most interesting of the main Zod characters was the mother, Jaina Zod. She had a really strong presence. She's got this authority, and she's able to back it up with her physical skill, but she's still, you can see that love for her daughter and that pride for her daughter, and she's wants to kind of hold her hand to this, but she knows she can't. She knows she's got to make her tough. And it works when she has to make the call to put her reputation on the line and the order to save her daughter and keep her from being executed. And then the next, obviously the biggest character is Brainiac. And they did a weird thing, I didn't really get into it. The big setup was that Brainiac was going to set off the Sentry, and he would find out about the city and whether he wanted to take it or not. And then he eventually would show up and take it. But they did this odd thing where he possessed the voice of Ra, who was such this odd character to begin with, because it was this mysterious guy with the mask on. You never really knew anything about him before he gets infected, and most of his talking and interactions when he's not just a Sentry for Brainiac, he is Brainiac in this Kryptonian body, I guess. And it was a kind of a goofy way to have Brainiac there without having Brainiac. And even then, when the ship shows up, Brainiac doesn't actually get off the ship. The voice of Ra, Brainiac, kind of dies or just destroyed or whatever, and just comes back as Brainiac in the armored form, which looked okay. It wasn't like the greatest, it wasn't the worst. Didn't get to see too much. He was just kind of a badass. You know, he waves at spaceships and they crash. I mean, didn't get to really understand how his powers even worked, but definitely gave the vibe of somebody that was going to be tough to beat. Which gives you the whole strange plot line that it was implied when the show started that Brainiac was the main villain. He went back in time, and that was going to cause Superman not to exist. So the Adam Strange character went back in time to stop him, and then come to find out Brainiac was just doing what he always did, collecting Kandor City, which would eventually lead to Krypton being destroyed. And now to talk about Adam Strange, waste of a character, man. I don't know a lot about him from the comic books, but the little I know doesn't seem to jive that well with the character we got. You know, just some Earth dude that got technology that let him go back through time into Krypton. Gave a shitty warning because he really didn't know what was going on. He was barely any help, and then he had to basically switch sides because he knew that Krypton had to be destroyed eventually for Superman to exist. And I don't know, it was kind of lame. I almost would have preferred that he came back, told the story, gave the cape to Segel and said, hey, when this cape's gone, you know, you're out of time, and then left, because he just added so little. And even his cliffhanger was strange, where he vanishes and appears on, looks like a city from Earth, being held on Brainiac's ship, except looks like it's modern Earth. And when you see in the final scene, a potential future where Zod has conquered Earth. I don't know, it was a weird thing. Hopefully that story gets better next season. Probably the biggest addition to the show, which is the big plot twist, was that it wasn't Brainiac that went back in time to keep Superman from happening. It was General Zod. Definitely you get thrown by, because obviously if you've ever seen Superman comics or TV series, Zod is a white dude, and in this version he's a black guy, so you're not going to guess more likely than not who he is until it's revealed. And then you get into weird things where now you know the show seems to be tweaking the classic things that you know about the Superman mythos, where now basically Segel, Superman's grandfather, hooked up with a Zod and had General Zod as their kid, which means Superman's father, Jor-El, is either a half-brother or a full brother, presumably half-brother to Zod. So Superman's got two uncles, and one of them Zod, and the other uncle is Zor-El, Supergirl's dad, if you want to know. So it was a weird twist. Wasn't sure how I felt about it. As I said, it just makes you feel like this is not going to be any Superman that you know, especially with the change in race. It's, you know, basically doing like Gotham. Gotham's kind of doing its own thing, so the characters don't have to line up where they do. So it makes a weird twist, especially when you don't know who to root for, because if you root for Segel, he's got to stop Brainiac and save Krypton, but you don't want that to happen because then Superman won't exist. So you feel like you shouldn't root for it. But now the timeline's so screwy, who knows? There's a lot of pacing issues with the series. Just, it seemed like it dragged, seemed like a lot didn't really happen. They did a really serialized flow with the episodes. So it just kind of went to the next episode. There wasn't anything you really could say, oh, episode 2, this happened, or episode 3, you know, this was the theme. It just kind of went on straight through for 10 episodes. And it was really, I don't know, just for only having the 10 episodes, the story just kind of dragged and didn't really pick up the pace, and there was no clear timeline when you could expect Brainiac to show up and do his thing. It was just kind of like, okay, he's doing this weird sentry thing, and then he got beat up and became Super Brainiac or whatever, the final form, and then he finally shows up. There was no ticking clock. They needed a ticking clock to make you feel the pressure that he's coming and he's going to destroy this city, and they got to figure out what to do. Then you had another odd twist where Doomsday was introduced, and he's kind of ready to run around in the background somewhere. Again, getting away from the classic Superman continuity, as far as I know. If I had to pick a favorite episode, I'm going to go with the season finale. The fight in the Phantom Zone was the episode. Just you do finally get to see Brainiac. He starts taking everybody out. His plan starts to come through. So at least there's some tension there. Kind of a weird subplot with the whole thing about the clone and Vex's daughter and all that stuff was just odd. Her walking around with this little egg fetus thing. I don't know what that's supposed to be. Does that maybe become Jor-El? Who knows? But strong ending where basically Brainiac and Segel get sucked into the Phantom Zone, and you see Superman's cape, and the Kryptonian House of L.S. transforms into the Kryptonian symbol for Zod's house, and then you see General Zod has taken over Krypton and plans on conquering the universe, and he's got the whole military behind him. So that was a pretty good twist. Makes you actually want to see what's going to happen next season. As far as my least favorite episode, there wasn't any that really jumped out at me, because I said the episodes were so kind of indistinguishable from one to the other. I'd probably go with the second episode, House of L. Just, I don't know, the political stuff started really getting heavy, and you didn't really know where it was going to go, and this sluggish start, and you just didn't know much about Seg yet and what he should be doing, and he's not listening to Adam Strange, and you want him to listen to Adam Strange because that's what the plot is. I mean, it was kind of a weak establishing episode. As far as some other odds and ends, go through my notes as always. As far as Seg's grandfather, this did pretty stereotypical Superman move where there's a Fortress of Solitude and he's a hologram that helps him for most of the episode. They kind of ruined it in the promotional material for the show and told you that his grandfather escapes death by going to the Phantom Zone, so when it's revealed that he's actually still alive there, it wasn't that shocking of a reveal, and the reunion was semi-touching. It was okay. I think that the voice of Ra was so mysterious. I thought they were going to do something interesting, that Brainiac had already infected him years ago, and that's why he was leading Krypton in this weird way, and it ended up not being the case, but he did get infected, and it kind of went from there. But again, he's just a vague character. He was basically there just to be a faceless character that can be an authority figure that Brainiac could take control of. So there was some decent action in the series. There's some good fight scenes. There was a couple that were, it was like Mortal Kombat, X-ray moves where people looks like they're getting the legs broken or limbs snapped, and pretty brutal. And they just keep fighting, and then they're just a little beat up afterwards, and they're walking it off. And that was a little nitpick, but there was some solid fight scenes. Couple things that got repetitive. They'd always cut to this weird Arctic kind of area, and this always looked cheesy. It just looked like a fake place. It never looked like they were really out in some Arctic wilderness somewhere trying to survive. They also never did a good job of explaining why you had to have this protective dome, why it was so bad out there. I mean, was it couldn't be just the cold because they had oxygen masks? Was it a lack of oxygen? I mean, they never explained what was so hazardous about there, and they never got into. I know there's other Kryptonian cities, but did they have domes too? Was it just Kindor? This underground section, that seems fine. So apparently the oxygen's good on the ground. So I don't know. It was just they could have explained that a little better with this, especially with as much work as they put into establishing everything. There's not a lot else in my notes. Not a ton to say about the show. It was only 10 episodes, and it wasn't that fantastic. But again, they had great production value. They spent money on the show. Hopefully something a little more interesting happens with some of the main characters, because right now they were a little bland, especially Adam Strange. So hopefully his trip to whatever frozen, futuristic, Zod-ruled Earth leads to something cool. Maybe he becomes closer to his comic book incarnation. And I think that's about it. I think I'm going to drop it there. So again, if you like this, subscribe. Don't got too many more videos planned. I know a few more weeks before Supergirl's over, and I'll do one for Legion, and I think about 2 or 3 more weeks. And that's all. So thanks for watching.